You are listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I am your host, Celine Yeager. Each week, I bring you advice from athletes, scientists, researchers, and other experts to help you feel and perform your best, no matter what your hormones are doing. This show is a production of Live Feisty Media. Happy New Year, strong, feisty women. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season and is looking forward to the new year. I, for one, am stoked to roll into 2024 with one of the most requested guests from the past couple of years, the wildly popular Peloton instructor and Masters World Champion and many-time Masters National Champion track racer, Christine D'Ercole. She has started using her enormous platform to share her experiences with perimenopause, and it has not gone unnoticed. I have received an avalanche of requests for her since she has started talking about it, and I am very excited to bring this conversation to you. Christine has a whole lot of power in her pedals, more than 1,000 watts worth to be exact. But as a writer and speaker, she has even more power in her words and the messages that she puts out into the world. Like, we are so much bigger than a smaller pair of pants, and that we should take our waistlines off the finish lines of our lives. She helps women empower themselves by changing their self-talk and helps guide them through her word shops, which are workshops devoted to self-talk, with her signature mantra, I am, I can, I will, I do. We cover so much ground here, including Christine's menopause experience, her body image battles, and how she uses self-talk in her own life, and you can too. Christine is also known for putting together incredible playlists for her Peloton classes, and I asked her what she might put on a menopause playlist, and she created a banging 26-song odyssey on Spotify, and I have been loving it, and I'm sure you will too. I will make sure to put a link to that in the show notes so you can download it and enjoy it in whatever you do. Speaking of enjoy, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. You can find out more about Christine and her work and her workshops at christinediercole.com. I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. All right, quickly before we get to it, give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook at Feisty Menopause. Sign up for my free weekly blog at feistymenopause.com, and keep those eyes peeled for a brand new course that we're going to be offering in this new year called Navigate Menopause. You're going to love it, and I have been working very hard on it. Okay, if you like this show, head on over to Apple and give us a good review and rating. It helps me continue to get great guests like Christine and a bunch more I have lined up in this new year. Again, Happy New Year. Let's get on with the show. Okay, Christine, I am ridiculously excited to have you here in front of me. As I was just saying before I hit record, I've been trying for a year, which is a record for me.
I can't believe it.
To get you on the show. So be unbeknownst to you, don't anybody think she was just blowing me off. I was trying all different channels and I finally hit one that worked. But so wow. I'm very excited.
I am so excited. Thank you.
And before we start, because I will do my intro separately and I will try to say your last name, and I know it's not so easy to pronounce. I was saying D'Ercole, but that might not be correct. Help me out.
Okay, so it means of Hercules. I know.
That's awesome. I love it.
It's dramatic. I'm dramatic. Yes. It fits. And the proper Italian pronunciation is D'Ercole.
I will do my best, man. D'Ercole. Is there a roll in there? D'Ercole.
D'Ercole. Yeah, D'Ercole.
D'Ercole.
But I don't always pronounce it that way because it's a lot. And if you're just trying to like get registered into your hotel room, you're like, I just
need a room.
It's just D'Ercole.
Right. There's a line behind me.
Here's how it's spelled. Yeah, because like who has time for that all the time? But I do love that name, and I will tell you that I made sure that it is my daughter's last name. So I've turned the patriarchal line
Love it.
into the matriarchal line.
That makes me very happy. That is,
Yeah.
because that name should live on with you. That name should
Right.
continue. I agree with that. So, we have gotten, we have literally thousands of Peloton members in our Hit Play Not Pause listenership and community. I know because we let them in, and they tell us where they found us. So like there's and since you have started openly speaking about hot flashes and perimenopause while you're riding your bike and doing your show, I've gotten an avalanche of requests to have you here.
Mm.
I mean, you've really, really moved a lot of people. And I personally want to thank you for like using that large platform for speaking about this because it literally changes lives. So thank you. I want to focus the conversation. We could talk all day about your life, but I want to focus the conversation really there because Christine, I get so many messages from women and it literally like makes my heart hurt. Their bodies are changing during this time of life and the things they say about themselves, it just is devastating. Their
Ugh.
confidence is shaken, their self-image is shattered. I see it every damn day. And when I saw your message, that is very prominently pinned on your Instagram, and I hear it a lot to take your waistline off your finish line of your life. I thought, oh, then nobody needs to hear this more. And
Mm.
I'd love you to like maybe start speaking to that. When did you devise that line for your life?
Um, that I mean, my life, my entire life has been. I grew up in ballet,
Mm,
where this
almost say no
visual.
more.
Yeah, I know, right? Like that's it. Enough. Podcast over. Um, but it's not just ballet, it's the world that we live in that tells us we need to look a certain way, behave a certain way, which is all about being smaller and quieter and delicate um and I was not born that way, and emotionally or physically. And I have battled myself my whole life to try to fit into that narrative that was not mine. And um it's I've been through my entire teenage existence in all kinds of self-harm, from eating disorders and cutting myself as a kid. I mean,
Ooh,
I did all of it, punishing myself because I couldn't fit into that tiny ballerina narrative. And so the line, take your waistline off the finish line, is something that came to me. It just popped out in a class one day that I was teaching, I don't know, a bunch of years ago. The same way I am, I can, I will, I do just came out of my mouth one day,
yeah.
class in the early 2000s. Um, and I think that is those lines that come out, those strings of words that sort of encapsulate or crystallize an idea or concept is well, it's part of what I love about teaching, because you have this magical experience of movement and thought and self-talk and challenge and how we navigate that. And when those strings of words just come out, I don't know, I live for that. I live for those moments. And take your waistline off the finish line just resonates.
Yeah.
It resonates strongly with a lot of people, with myself included, because all of this conversation that we're having with ourselves about, I am not good enough, I am not small enough, I am not whatever, I am not cool enough, I am too big, I am, and what we can or can't do about it becomes a really defeatist conversation most of the time. We talk shit to ourselves. We would
Yep.
never talk to anybody else that way.
And women's waistlines will expand at some level, as they go through menopause and get
Like,
older. That
why
is
the can I curse? Why
yes.
fuck are we like, oh my God, it is so ingrained in us that we walk by a mirror. That's like one of the first things that we look at, and we judge ourselves against that. And every time I come down the stairs to go get on my bike in the basement, and I've got my bibs on, and I'm like, And I'm talking against that in everything I do in life. And yet the habit of looking at myself as I come down those stairs and see that mirror at the bottom of the stairs, the habit of self-judgment is so deeply ingrained in all of us. And I want, like, I try to imagine, what would it be like if there were no mirrors?
I've had this conversation on the show. Yeah.
This, oh my God. That occurred to me, I don't know when. It's been like a lingering thought for a long time. If there were, like, could I reimagine my life without mirrors? Um, and what would life be like? What would we do with our time if we weren't thinking about what we looked like, especially in bed? But and I will say this, one space where I am not thinking about what I look like is when I'm racing my bike.
I didn't think that was coming after you just said in bed. I was like, where's this show going? But I'm glad you said that too. Like, because because and that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I listen to some other shows about your journey, it seems like you really did step into your power and full acceptance and appreciation even of your body,
Yeah.
because you recognize what literally the power that it could have on a bike.
Yeah. I do feel like I have, yeah, that's funny. I do feel like I have stepped into my power in that regard. And at the same time, I'm still having those conversations sometimes in my head with myself. I don't think it ever completely goes away. I think we just get better at managing the narrative, managing that inner dialogue. I mean, that's what my workshops are about, is about developing the skills to manage and direct those conversations with ourselves, so that the words that are holding us back, those really fucked up negative core beliefs about ourselves, um, instead of them having power over us, we can turn them around to empower us
Yeah, and
by changing the words.
imagine if when you walk down the stairs, you also like would be like, "Thank you, Belly, for like producing
Yes.
some more hormones during this time of life and for setting
Yeah.
me up for a healthier old age." Because like
Right.
those studies are there too, that a little more weight is actually predictive of longevity than
Yeah.
being skinny.
Right. I know. And that is the conversation when I'm standing there in front of the mirror. Um, and remembering the little girl standing in front of the
Mm.
mirror, wishing that she could literally shave parts of herself off, to saying those legs were built for something. And whether or not I've won the race, I had joy in the race on a bicycle, and those legs give me freedom, and it make me feel empowered and make me feel strong, and make me proud of myself. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, this is,
I have to share because yes, there's a woman in I will definitely cry during this episode at some point because this is so emotional for me. But there's a woman in our membership in our group who has, she's definitely struggled with the whole body composition changes and with some of the weight, and she's typically been an endurance athlete. She got on a track bike. You better believe it. And like talk about someone lighting up. And I was
yeah,
like, yes, you
oh,
know, like, that is amazing. Like, that's
oh,
yes, go to it, like,
yes, oh God,
um
that brings me so much joy, I could cry. The track bike specifically, I feel personally, the track bike, this bike with no brakes and the fixed gear, and riding up on that 40 something degree banking, absolutely petrifying. And to come into this, like, especially in middle age, it's like, "Oh, no, that's for the kid." No, no,
No,
this is a really powerful place to be, and there are women on my team who had never, ever didn't even know what a velodrome was or even understood the concept of what a fixed gear bicycle is, who are, like, racing now.
I love that. I love that.
Like,
It's
really
so
cool.
it's so great. So let's go a little bit. I'm curious now that you're sort of, immersed in the menopause transition, as it
Yeah.
were. Looking back, like, was that ever on your radar? Did you ever think about
No.
perimenopause or menopause?
Nope. 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 No. Um, I think that, like, many young people, you think this it's never actually going to happen to me. At the same time, I do have a very doom mindset. I'm I'm prone to doom, like imagining the worst possible thing happening, on a regular basis. Um, but like menopause was just not something that it didn't occur to me. And when those of big moments rather, of the sweats, the flashes, you're like, oh, that's no, it's just, it's that's, it couldn't be that. It couldn't be that. Um, and then, and dealing with, getting to race weight, um, like, oh, it's not so easy this time. It's a little harder. Um, and trying to navigate that, like, no, it wasn't on my radar until these moments start to collect where you're questioning yourself, is it that? And I've been in my head, like, in this dance between watching for the tipping point, like, when will enough moments have accumulated that I am now over, to use that term, over the hill. Um, like, at what point will I never hit those watts again? Or at
Mm,
what point am I going to be unable to get stronger, and it becomes a game of maintaining
mhm.
and preventing loss? At, like, where's when is that transition official? And I'm trying not to look for that moment.
That's so interesting, and there's a lot to unpack here. So rewinding a little bit, when did the I'll just call them symptoms or signs of your
Yeah.
hormonal, life changing. When did the light bulb go off? Like, I saw a post from May on
Mhm.
Instagram where you were like, "What the F is wrong with me? I'm struggling with the fog, brain fog." Like, when did you actually the word perimenopause come into your existence?
It really, after my crash last year
Hmm.
in August of
Tell people about
2020.
that a little bit who don't
Oh
know.
gosh. It was the last race before World Championships. I was ready to go to World Championships. It was only 3 or 4 weeks before going. Um, and it was the last race at the velodrome here in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And it was a silly race. You know what I mean? Everybody was out just having fun. There were no high stakes to this race, and there was a small field. There was only 7 women in the race, and I got bumped at high speed, and it was I have I have been able to, knock on wood, um, keep myself from crashing so many times. I've had close calls. I've somehow managed through some level of bike handling skills to stay upright. I've only had like three spills, and none of them were bad. Like, I got back up and raced again before. And this time I went down, and I still, in my head, I was like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm a little scraped. My helmet's cracked, I'm sure, because I could hear it. And the and I remember laying there in a ball at the bottom of the track. And we were supposed to go tubing that afternoon. I wanted to go tubing on the Delaware. And all of my friends and my daughter was in town. We were all going to go tubing down the Delaware. This was something I've been wanting to do for a long time. Today was the day. And I said, I think we'll be fine. We'll just be a little bit late. And then I heard a clack, bang, and then my friend Mallory was 10 feet overhead, literally flying through the air, and she landed ahead of me. And I thought, maybe tubing is off the table. It's wild how when you're in such a trauma, the brain just wants to hold on to what's normal. Going tubing was like normal.
Right.
And yeah, so then I spent the night in the hospital, and I had broken my collarbone, my scapula was cracked in 2 places, and I had broken 2nd and 3rd ribs.
Oh,
Yeah. And there was no world championships, there was no tubing. And Mallory was in the hospital for an entire week.
oof.
And the back of her hip socket was destroyed and had to be rebuilt. She's got a scar from the middle of her butt 3/4 of the way down her thigh. Yeah. So all of that to say, I got my period in the hospital, and like, this is not convenient. And it was explained to me that this is like a trauma response. And then I didn't get it again until January.
Huh.
So every month that went by, I was like, is this just a trauma thing? Or did I get like slingshot into? I don't
Oh,
know. I don't know
interesting.
if there is an answer. And my period had been off and on. I'd had like miss a couple months here and a couple months there for maybe 3 years.
Mm.
But okay, it's definitely starting. But that period of time from September to January, it's like, okay, something's really happening. And I could feel just a difference. And okay, well, I don't really have a choice. I got to go on this ride. It's happening to me. It's happening to me. And the idea of something, there are methods of managing it out there, hormone replacement, which I have not explored yet. All kinds of things you can do with what you're eating and making sure you're sleeping and staying hydrated, all the good things that we do to take care of ourselves to help manage it. But it's still happening. It's still happening. And it's happening to us. And even if we do take measures to quiet the symptoms or alleviate the symptoms, we're still dealing with it, and we can't avoid dealing with it. And that shift in thinking that something beyond my control is happening to me there's mortality is tied up in there.
Sure is. And
Yep.
I've always thought that's why a lot of people I've always thought that's why it has traditionally been a shadowy, sort of stigmatized conversation, because it's so wrapped up in ageism and fear and all the other, I mean, there's so much wrapped up in it. It's not just the end of your reproductive cycle, it's just like there's so
No,
much
it's like
more.
the end of your visibility. I mean, that's what we're taught.
You're taught, but you've become, I would argue, more visible.
And well, that's where I think more visible in a positive way is where we're going now. I watched the film, this was perfect timing, Naiad last night.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
And the ferocity of determination at 62, 60, whatever, 60, whatever, that, you know, we're called crazy, we're called all of those, you know, negative. When a woman's determination gets loud, she's called a lot of negative things. And why should we turn our volume down? Why? How are we less important? How should we fade? And now, if I saw that movie 10 years ago, I I may have had a different perspective.
Mm,
20 years ago, I'd be like, oh, the
that's nice. I
like,
don't-
oh, you know, I mean, I would have been inspired. I know I would have been
Yeah.
inspired because I know who I am and I know what moves me. I would have been inspired, but I wouldn't have understood
Hmm.
what it is to be in this period of life
Hmm.
and what that determination meant back then. And it
Yeah.
meant so much to me now.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because you went straight into this watching the needle, which I thought was such an interesting metaphor on your power and your strength and wondering, when can I still move that needle? And when am I just trying to hold the needle? And when does the needle start inching back? I mean, as athletes, we all kind of,
Yeah.
understand that very implicitly. Um, all of that said, I believe you're 52 now. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And I heard you talk in an interview where you were talking about how were as strong as you had ever been at 50, and
Yeah.
you had like a lot of these accomplishments racing at age 51 at elite nationals,
Yeah.
getting third in a race with Olympians. That is, and then I watch you, I did one of your classes very recently, like before Thanksgiving, where you were talking about it was a power zone max ride. And you said, I once hit 1500 watts. These days, menopause, I'm lucky to break
Mhm.
1,000. You know, where where are you in that journey? I mean, is it, I know you've started strength training. I'd love to hear a little bit about that too, but like, where are you with watching your watts, feeling strong, trying to get strong? What does that look like now?
So now and my mindset is I have nothing to complain or cry about if I am not putting in the time. I can't get mad if I don't hit something if I'm not actually doing the whole workout and recovering
Mm,
the balance, committing to the whole cycle of the periodized training, doing the whole thing, because I would often do like 3/4 of a workout.
I like that honesty. I appreciate it.
Oh my God. My coach, Missy Erickson, um, would give me a workout. I've got like 5 efforts, 1 minute at stupid watts
Mm.
with 7 minutes of recovery. I'm like, oh God, 7 minutes of recovery. You need that recovery to do those watts. However, I'm like, oh, it's 8 o'clock at night. I gotta make
Oh,
dinner. And I would do 3 of them.
yeah.
But I also would be battling my ego because I'd be trying to overshoot what she gave me. And then I'd go into a downward spiral because the number she gave me was so far out of reach because she was trying to dangle a carrot in front of me just to see how close I could get. I'm not holding 637 watts for a minute. Stop it. I cannot do that. My body is not capable of that, and it's okay. But playing this psychological game with myself and cutting myself short because my ego is standing in the way. And
Mm.
so I've been rethinking all of that and doing sort of just like I preach in class, having a healthier perspective on what those metrics mean. And it's not about hitting that number. It is about how close can you get and how do you handle the moment when you want to give up. And how do you pace yourself to get back in? What are the things you say to yourself? You may have heard me say in class, you're going to want to stop pedaling. Even if you go slower, keep pedaling. It's training the brain in that regard that actually makes us stronger in a much larger way, in a much more global way. And so my thinking now is, regardless of menopause, I am putting in the time. I have taken other things off of my plate, because I put way too many things on my plate. I have been very strategically removing things from my plate so that I can focus on this self-care, to see what I can do, to see what my potential is. Because I've gotten pretty far doing 80% of the work. And there's a lot to be said for that balance.
Mm.
However, right now I'm in this space where I want to put in closer to 100 and see what happens. And part of that is the strength training. Because in the past, I've been a little, spotty with it. I've been committed and then I've dropped off. But then I would also, again, the ego, I'm being so transparent here. I would try to lift more than I should.
Mm.
And then I tweak something. I get a little tweak in my back, or a tweak in my ankle, or a tweak in my shoulder. And then I'm out for however long. And then you go through that whole downward spiral of like, well, what's the point? And well, forget it. I'm just going to see what I can do without strength training.
Right. Right.
And lo and behold, I still did pretty well. But the strength training now, it's more than what can I do as an athlete. It's about preserving my ability to stand upright. It is about preserving my mobility and to keep moving in the world, because you sit still too long and you stop moving. So I don't see myself ever stopping moving unless somebody else stopped me. But it is more about my health and overall well-being. And if I get an athletic benefit from it, rock on.
I can't say enough about that. I mean, only because like you, I was very spotty. I would do it like before the season just to sort of get everything strong to train, but then it would just go. And I was plenty strong without it, and I just didn't do it. I prioritize strength so much because I can really feel it. I can feel it just doing the dishes. I can feel it all for everything. I feel like really strong and amazing, and I can 100% feel it on my bike. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for you, because I do think that with that consistency, and are you getting trained there too? Are you following a structured program?
Yeah, my coach Missy has a whole program for me for cycling and for strength.
Good.
Yeah. And I click off every exercise, and I'm very proud of myself. And I modify where I need to. The shoulder is still a little funky, and the program says add 5 more, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm gonna stay right here right now. So I'll drop it on my face.
That's fair. I mean,
Yeah.
those are smart adjustments to make.
Yes.
But I'm curious, like I'd love to I'll keep an eye on how you feel as you go through it,
Yes.
because I think that you're gonna be pleasantly there'll be some pleasant revelations. Let's
Well,
put it
and
that
there
way.
already have been. Like my low back, I always have low back stiffness from spending, what is it, 30 years on a bike. My body wants to be in this position. And And so when I try to do anything else, there's all this tightness there. But since I've been doing the strength work, that stiffness is dissipating.
Yeah. I find that with my hips. Like, same thing. I sit and I write all day, and my favorite thing is, of course, being on a bike, and it's just like always the same
Yes.
position, and shocking. They get kind of cranky, but like strength training on a regular basis makes it all go away. So
Yeah.
it
Can't
is a
say enough
priority.
about it.
So what are your day-to-day symptoms now? I mean, are you sleeping well? Do you still, I know that there's probably still hot flashes and such,
Yeah,
but
there's an occasional hot flash, and they'll come in like a flock. But then there won't be any for a while. It could be like there was that several weeks ago during that time when I didn't that post about the crazy fog and the bumper cars in my head, where I had, I don't know, 7 or 8 flashes one evening. I was just sitting there with Brian on the sofa watching TV, and I'm like, can you feel this?
and you weren't even stressed out, like nothing was.
I'm just watching TV, and like I'm getting all clammy and whoops. Gosh, I hope you can edit that out.
Yeah, my editor's good with that.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I thought I put it on, it is on silent. I don't know how that happened. Um, Sitting there, and I got just clammy, like a volcano. And and then it lasted, I don't know, a few minutes, and then it went away. And I don't know, an hour later it comes up again. And I started timing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember when my mother was timing my contractions
I was just gonna say that sounds
when
like
I was
childbirth.
giving birth. And and then it just stopped. But then also it's shown itself in random middle of the night, gotta change the sheets sweats.
Yeah, I had those. Those have thankfully those went away, but there was about a year where it was literally like I was like a sprinkler system, like in Palm Springs. It was just like like projectile sweating, like a river of water running down my spine. I was like,
Yes.
and of course that was like before I knew anything, before I started the
Right.
show, and I was like, and I used to furnace sometimes during hard training blocks, and I
Mm,
kind of wrote it off to that, but I was 100% not that. It was
yeah.
definitely the. Yeah,
Right?
because I would also have like I'd wake up and feel like the sky was falling, like really panicked, kind of have to sort of
Right?
talk myself down and soaked in sweat. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that was not a picnic. I'm glad that that subsided. I,
I had some of those periodically in my 30s. I don't know if that was like a super, super early moment. I do remember, now that we're talking about it, I forgot about this. I had a stretch of time in my 30s where there's no way you're going through perimenopause in your 30s. However, I had symptoms like that. I had these, maybe it was stress, maybe it was, yeah, I was not in a great place at that time in my
it can
life.
affect your HPA axis and your the hormones that affect your cycle. They're like this, man. They're very intertwined. So that's why stress can like make you stop getting your period. I mean, it's we
Yes.
women are complicated
Very sensitive
creatures.
being.
How has the response been? I mean, I know from my end what the response has been from your community since you started openly, but I'm curious, like Peloton, they are obviously very cool with you saying whatever you want. How is your
You know,
community?
I have been completely supported. I started talking about it because I talk about what's really going on with me. I don't um
Oh yeah, people know about your marriage, your life. It's awesome.
open book. But I if we're not talking about what's real, what are we talking about? Like
Yeah.
what's the point of talking if we're not talking about what's real? And I did um I brought it up in a production meeting. I said, "So, I've been talking about this stuff, and I'm thinking that without too much planning or anything, I'm going to continue talking about this. It is appreciated. Um it makes me feel seen, and it makes them feel seen, and I know that I have a niche audience, if you will. Um, I'm not playing all of the pop music. I'm always looking for something darker or some more profound storytelling
Mm.
in my music and in how I teach my classes. And this just falls right into being true to myself. And
Yeah, I
so
love it.
I am totally supported. Um, we did throw out the idea of like, well, is there like menopause class? And I'm like, I don't think that there's menopause class. I just think that it's a natural, organic part of the conversation I'm having with myself, and sharing that in the teaching of my classes is just it's another step on the journey.
And I would argue that that's really how you normalize it,
Yeah,
not by making it a separate class.
right. It's happening in whatever class you're taking.
Right.
Plus, what would
Yeah.
that class look like? We're still doing our classes. We're still exercising. We're still doing self-care. Um, if, you know, if someone's grossed out by or thinks it's odd or weird to talk about, then they can take somebody else's class. There's a
Yeah.
lot of choices. And if they think that that's odd to talk about, they probably aren't taking my classes to begin with anyway.
Right. No, I think that I like it right in there because that's where the power lies
Right?
in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, I know you do a lot of word shop, like, and like you mentioned at the top of this conversation, I am, I can, I will, I do, the things that just come out that become mantras and then take on this life force of their own.
Yeah.
And as I was preparing for this conversation, I was like, boy, I'd love her to word shop perimenopause through that mantra. So, I mean, like, if you were to do I am, I can, I will, I do for the women, listening to this, what might you say?
I would say that, first of all, let me start by saying, if we could have a transcript of our inner dialogue at the end of the day and read it, we would find laced throughout all of the things we said that many of those sentences start with the words either I am, I can, I will, or I do, whether it is positive, tentative, or negative. Be I am not, I can, I could, couldn't, can't, will, would, wouldn't, won't, do, didn't,
Mm-hmm.
don't. And we listen to what we're telling ourselves. We listen to those conversations without realizing that we can, if we claim it, have agency in the conversation. Until we realize that we have agency in the conversation that we're having with ourselves, it's driving us. We'll obey. And once we realize that it is possible to catch ourselves, to listen to the conversation, we spend a lot of time blocking the conversation we're having with ourselves, like numbing out from it because it hurts to listen to. But if we tune in and actually hear what's happening, then we can interrupt that conversation with ourselves and change the direction, the trajectory of the narrative. So I am bigger than a smaller pair of pants. I can listen to that conversation, that sometimes shitty conversation in my head, and navigate that narrative from having power over me to empowering me by changing the words. I will share my experience in hopes of empowering others. And I do claim agency over how menopause affects my story.
Love it. That was me just clapping.
There's a mantra. So, and the purpose of word shop,
Mm.
I mean, you could do one once and it will have some impact on you, but to continue the practice especially for someone who might struggle with journaling, you can write 4
Mm,
sentences.
I like that. I like that
It
because I do, as a writer, I oddly struggle with journaling because
right,
it's just not,
right,
words are always in my head. They're always coming out of my
yes.
fingers. Just to sit down and journal is just like
More?
nothing. Right?
More?
What? I've given so much.
Right.
But that I like a lot. Because
The
it does,
repeat
like,
process.
it matters when I am out there and I am 7 hours into what could be a 9-hour bike event, or a
Right.
race, like, everything I say to myself is everything.
Is everything. It is everything. What we say to ourselves c can determine what happens.
100%.
And look, changing the words in our head is not it's not going to make you win the race.
Right.
It's not going to cure cancer or get you the job, but it's going to change how we navigate the challenges in our lives, how we handle those things. And that's our agency. That's our empowerment is how we handle the things
And that
that
can change the course of
and it
things.
can change the course of things. Yes.
So moving with this theme, um, I also love your playlist because I too sort of trend towards the more eclectic and maybe some of the more darker elements of music sometimes. If if you had to put together just a few songs that would be on a perimenopause experience playlist, what songs might you add to that?
I actually made this playlist and I emailed it to you earlier.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's called CDE's menopause playlist.
I'll have to
Um,
link that.
yes, 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 yes. Let me pull it up. Where is it? My library. I'll do it on the computer. My
While you're looking that up, I know that you have the number 333 tattooed on you because it's the velodrome. I was born at
yeah,
3:33 in the morning. I just
I
wanted to
read
share that.
that. That is so wild. I love those serendipitous details. Um, I didn't know 333 was just a number that followed me around forever. And high school, college, whether it was an address or a phone number or the time of day that something sort of serendipitous happened or something surprised me or I made a decision that was monumental. Um, Suddenly I'm standing in front of a 333 address. It would happen regularly. Now I know you look for things, you find them.
Right.
So with a little grain of salt, say it was my lucky number, whatever. But when I started racing on the velodrome, I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't aware of like the 250-meter track versus the 333-meter track. I was just racing my bike
Right.
back in the 90s, in the early to mid 2000s. And when I won my first Masters National Championship in the match sprints in Colorado in 2009, I got a photograph handed to me of myself crossing that finish line. And I'm just looking at that photograph. And I notice right there at the finish line, it says 333. And
Mm,
I said, wow, that's so crazy. And so I had to have it tattooed on my leg.
I love that.
That's the story. I've got my
And I
playlist
I was gonna say I just called it up too. That is I am 100% gonna put this in the show notes for
here.
everybody.
Yes. The first song on there is Zen with K Flaying.
I I love it. I love all of this. I like Burn Your Village.
Oh, do you
That's
know this one by
I
KK
do.
Rockwell? Oh God. There's, that song really gets me. That the sort of the witchiness
Mhm.
associated with middle age and menopause. Um,
Yeah, I love that. I am not a woman, I'm a god. There's a lot in here. It's awesome.
Seize the Power by I don't know how
Mm,
you put Yonaka.
mhm.
Oh my God. PJ Harvey, Susie and the Banshees, and then 30 Seconds to Mars, Alibi. I fell down and got back up again. Just speaks to me. And I don't know if you know NF.
I
Hope.
do. Yeah, through your show, as a matter of
Oh,
fact. Or your show. I keep
Also,
calling it your
I
show.
know what you
It's your
mean.
class. I mean, it's a
Yes.
performance. Yes,
And
through your
now
class.
there's this artist I just discovered in the last week or two, Ren.
I don't know, Ren.
Now, he's not singing about menopause, obviously. But he his work, he's an incredible storyteller, and his music is beyond music. It's theater. It's powerful
Hmm.
theater. And if you watch his videos, they're such incredible storytelling about the conversations we're having with ourselves in
Hmm.
the mental health space. And so I strongly recommend. Whew.
This is going to be exciting. I'm very
Yeah.
excited to dig into this list. It's a great list, folks. There's like 26 songs on this playlist. So I am giddy. I love music. Like I'm
Yeah.
like it's and discovering music and this kind of like putting together playlists. So thank you for doing that. That is really great. I'm beyond
Took me
excited.
about 4 minutes.
Oh, I
I was like, oh yeah, boom, 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 boom.
I really love it. So I have like a final question that I hadn't sent your way, but I learned that you were in Dead Poet Society and you met Robin Williams.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was what, a junior, senior in high school at the Performing Arts High School in Philadelphia, the private one. And they came to our school and did auditions. And my boyfriend at the time, Al Ruggiero, got to play Meeks, which was wild. That was,
Wow.
yeah, major part. And I was cast as an extra for the Shakespeare scene when Robert Schonleider's character goes to the girls' school and auditions for the play, Midsummer Night's Dream. And I showed up on set and I got to meet Peter Weir. And he held my face. He put his hand on my face and turned my profile. And he said, "You should have been born in the 40s."
Huh.
Oh my God. I thought, oh, I'm going to be a star. And then I was handed the script and told to learn the lines for Titania, the Queen of the Fairies in Midsummer Night's Dream. So I went from extra to day player.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I was stayed in a hotel for a few days in Delaware, and it was wild. And I think this was happening at a time when I knew that I had gotten into Carnegie Mellon, and I was so stoked about that because that was legit. and
Yeah, it is.
and then Ethan Hawke, I met him there, and I think he went to Carnegie for a minute. I think he went for like 60 seconds, and then he like was getting cast, and it's like bye-bye. So I was all starstruck by that. But the Robin Williams moment was after a rehearsal in the theater. I was standing there on the stage. The theater was clear. Nobody else was there. And I was having this moment with myself of I cannot believe I'm here. I'm actually in a movie. Like there's all these people I respect so much, and like it's happening. The sensation of a dream coming true. Like literally unfolding. And in the back of the theater, the door opens and Robin Williams steps in. And I literally panicked. I said, oh, fuck, I have to be funny. And he says to Tanya with all of this flourish. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And he starts walking towards me and doing this like special, fancy, dramatic walk. And I said, oh, Robin. And he says, Titania. And I said, Robin. And it went back and forth until he got to the bottom of the stage. And he put his hand up and I pulled him up on the stage. And he said, thank you. It was nice to meet you. And went on his way. And that was it. I mean, that was it. But it was it was a moment of, it started as total panic, and then I found I was okay.
Mm,
And he is who he is,
mm.
is in our hearts and minds. And to go from being completely intimidated and full of anxiety about, oh my God, I have to be funny, to like, no, just exist in this moment. You're meeting another human being who, yes, has had an impact on you. And I don't know, that moment it's a punctuation in my life about, no, you're okay. It's fine. Everything's fine. You don't have to perform. You don't have to be anything other than what you are.
I love that. I love everything about that. And I draw on that exact sort of mindset whenever, like, sometimes I give presentations, right? Or that kind of thing. And I'm just like, just be you, and that there's so many life lessons in that very simple thing. Like, it's okay. Just like be you.
Trust yourself
Yeah.
and be true to yourself.
Well, I loved every minute of this conversation. Is there anything that we haven't touched on or that you wanted to make sure that you left women in this audience with?
Um, I think that what I would leave with is to remind ourselves that, of what we just talked about, that we are okay. We don't have to pretend. We can talk about what's real. We should keep talking about what's real. And if we encounter resistance to that or opinions about that from others, that I always I have this tool in my pocket, a couple of tools always in my pocket. And one is my breath, remembering to breathe, so that when those uncomfortable moments present themselves, and remembering to breathe helps me center myself, ground myself in being true to myself. And this is a newer tool for me, literally imagining there's a bubble around my heart and a bubble around me. And I can see everything that's happening in the world. I can observe it, but it can't get to me. My bubble protects me. I am safe in my bubble, and I am seen.
Hmm.
I am safe and I am seen at the same time. That has been a go-to imagery in my head for a while now. And the last thing I would say is, in that bubble, to remember that we have agency over the conversation we're having with ourselves in our heads. We can redirect it, we can course correct it, so that we are not beating up on ourselves, but instead we are putting a hand on our own back and supporting ourselves and empowering ourselves.
Where did the bubble come from? Were you feeling vulnerable?
Yes. Very. Um, the bubble came from, I remember, it came from preparing for my retreat in Greece a year ago. And I wanted to create a space for everyone where they would feel safe. Like, you say safe space, but literally a safe space, because the work of word shop it's vulnerable. You're
Yeah.
being honest with yourself, and you're actually sharing some of that with the group. And I wanted to make sure that people felt safe and seen. And I was allowing myself to write, just free writing, whatever came to mind. And this started to spill out the same way, take your waistline off the finish line, and I am a can I will I do spilled out. It came from playing with words,
Mm.
and allowing myself to write anything and everything that came to my mind. And suddenly there I was, like a little kid blowing bubbles, trying to blow the perfect bubble. Not too hard, not too light, to make a big, beautiful bubble. And it just, whew. So I have been sharing that in all of my retreats and many workshops since then. And it's been a really powerful thing to keep coming back to carry that bubble with you in life, in your everydayness, is it's very grounding.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking.
And thank you for being here, because this has been a true treat.
I am so appreciative that we connected.
Well, that's our show. Come on back next week when I sit down with researcher and co-founder at Women Living Better, Nina Kozlov, who has been researching what many women experience, that so much of what happens during menopause can start many, many years before we or our doctors expect it to, and what that all means for our care. It's a great conversation. She's doing important work. So come on back for that one. And until then, as always, stay feisty. You've been listening to Hit Play, Not Pause, a feisty menopause podcast for active, performance-minded women. I'm your host, Celine Yeager. The show is edited and produced by the strong, talented, and amazing women at Live Feisty Media. Follow us on social media at Feisty Menopause. And please help us spread the word. Screenshot and share this episode on your social media channels with the tag @FeistyMenopause. Share the show with your friends. And please subscribe, like, review, and rate this show wherever you get your podcasts. Word of mouth and good reviews make it easier for other listeners to find. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay feisty.